Good morning. This is our February office hours presentation. Our topic today is a new owner training. The webinar is not just going to be beneficial for new owners, it's going to be beneficial for anybody that participates in TDHCA programs and anybody that might need a refresher or anybody that is new to any of the affordable housing items that we have or programs that we monitor here at the department. My name is Kara Poli. I'm a team leader in Multifamily Compliance Division. Amy Hammond is the Manager of Compliance, and she is going to be in our questions and chat box today. So if you have questions, please put those in your questions box, and then watch the chat box for resources that Amy is going to share. Isela Caseman with our Legal Division is here with us today as well, and she's going to present a couple of our modules. And then we also have Manuel Pena here to talk a little bit about physical inspections and construction inspections. Couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Make sure you put all your questions in the questions box and don't direct any chat or questions directly to me or any other presenters, as we will not see them. You can do those in the general box or direct them to Amy and she will get those answered or asked out loud. If you're able to, please silence your phones and put an out of office on your email for this brief webinar so that we can help you get the most out of this information session as possible. There are no certificates for this session because it is an informational session. Once we are done with the presentation, if you have attended office hours with us before, you'll know this. We will shift gears, stop the recording. The presentation part will be over, and we will open it up for about an hour of open forum question and answers. Any staff that wishes to remain will do that. It'll for sure be me and Amy and Manuel. I don't know if Isela is going to hang out with us for that part, but she's welcome to. Again, this webinar is being recorded. It'll be posted to our website within about a week of the presentation. You will get an email confirmation thanking you for your attendance, or if you have staff that was not able to come, they will get an email that says thank you so much for registering. We're sorry that you missed it. Here's where the recording is. If you need to get the handouts, they are going to be on your go-to toolbar under More or under the Handouts section. And then if you need to have closed captioning turn on, you can click the captions button on your GoToWebinar toolbar. So without further delay, we're going to begin our presentation.
Kara?
Yes.
Before you do that, can you please change my access? I just realized I don't have the right.
Oh, yes. I usually do.
Sorry. I thought that I did, and then I just went to do something, and I don't.
Make organizer. There we go. You got it?
I think I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if you ever need to contact the department, this is the information that you'll want to use. We do have a mailing address. Mail is not received at our East 11th Street address, but if you want to see where the magic happens, that is where we are located. A lot of us do work remote though, so email is going to be the best way to start a conversation with anybody at the department, but you can also reach out by phone and leave us a voicemail. The website is about a year old, but it did change from the old website that we had, as did the domains in all of our emails. So go ahead and start making that shift to where you've got the new domain and the new website. It's got a good search engine on it that works, so you should be able to navigate that relatively easily. This website or this slide contains some resources. We've got our compliance forms posted online. Manuals and rules are available on our website. The income and rent limits along with the web-based income and rent tool are available. All of our trainings and presentations are on the website. The tenant-based rental assistance program has their own section of resources, and then there's a compliance division contact list there. If you need another division's contact list, you can do the search engine for that, and it usually works pretty well. And then our section 811 has its own little section of our website as well. So without further ado, I'm going to shift gears and let Isela Caseman have the screen.
Hello, I'm Isela Caseman. I am here to talk first about TDHCA expectations. So why should owners care about compliance? We hear this a lot. Most owners do have an outside property management company, and the owner will often say to us when we're working on compliance enforcement, why should I care about this? I have an outside manager. first is our primary focus. TDHCA is committed to providing decent, safe, affordable housing to low-income Texans. And why should owners care? In most cases, potential consequences for noncompliance are against the owner. They're not against the property management company. Some examples: Form 8823 is filed with the IRS for tax credit noncompliance within the compliance period. There are possible administrative penalties of up to $1,000 per day per violation against the owning entity. And there's also the potential for debarment of the controlling responsible parties, and that includes both entities and individuals. So that means that it includes individual natural persons who control an entity. So that's really important to keep in mind. And this is, like I mentioned before, that's the case even when the owner is using an outside property management company. Why is the owner responsible? First reason is that our land use restriction agreements, or LURAs, are program agreements between TDHCA and the owner. And so owners with control authority are responsible for compliance with TDHCA requirements, and that includes natural persons in control of an entity. And so we gave you a link, a screenshot there of 10 Texas Administrative Code 11.129. It outlines what we define as being in control. So that's a really important thing to understand. TDHCA expectations regarding property management company selection. This is a very important thing for owners to pay attention to. Properties are privately owned, and TDHCA does not regulate or approve property management companies. So it's really important for owners to ensure that their selective property management company has program experience and competency, regular training for their on-site management staff and supervisors, and supervision for on-site management. Owners should not rely solely upon that property management company, and the owner should independently exercise appropriate and regular oversight of management company activities. They should review correspondence from TDHCA. We'll be going over that a little bit today about how we upload our correspondence to our system. The owner should oversee resolution of issues of noncompliance by property management. Obviously, property management will be taking the primary role there, but it's really important for the owner to oversee it and to track TDHCA deadlines to make sure that all of the deadlines are met and that corrections are uploaded fully. And so the primary thing to keep in mind there is just making sure that you ensure complete and timely submission of all corrections. And now we'll shift into the compliance monitoring and tracking system, and that's back with Kara.
We're shifting around
Floating
today,
heads.
guys. Yes. Yes. So thank you, Isela. This webinar is kind of a crash course in a whole bunch of things, and then we have more detailed webinars and training opportunities for each individual piece. So if you have questions and you're like, man, I really want to dig deeper into the compliance monitoring and tracking system, I've spent an hour and a half talking about that. We've got a webinar for that. So we can get you those resources as well if that's something you want more of. So the compliance monitoring and tracking system, or CMTS, system is what allows the owners to submit required reports like the unit status report, annual owner's compliance report, and submit documentation directly to the department. It also gives the opportunity for the department to submit documentation to the owner. The email contacts listed in CMTS are the ones that are contacted. We're going to talk about that a little bit more and kind of what's required of that. I believe Amy just put the link here into the chat, but this is how you would log into CMTS. And hopefully, if you're not familiar with that, you have somebody close to you that is, that you can kind of walk through that with. But this is definitely a system that if this is in your responsibility umbrella or you're an owner, I would definitely encourage you to familiarize yourself with this system. So when you go to our website, you're going to see this. It's going to tell you to log into CMTS, and you're going to click this button right here. It's going to take you into CMTS, and then there's going to be, the different reports. And if you have multiple properties under your login name, it's going to have that as listed for you to use. There's also some resources here. There's attaching documents in CMTS, upload instructions, and then there's a link to get to the compliance resources page compliance reports page and trainings presentation, just in case you think, oh, I don't really know how to do this, so I'm going to go watch the webinar first. If you are not set up to report online, you will want to do that. You'll want to click here. Now it's the 2024 CMTS filing agreement, which I did put in the resources tab along with the handouts for today's webinar. And then there's instructions for adding buildings. If you ever have CMTS errors or questions, you can email those to cmts.requests@tdhca.texas.gov, and they will get back to you within 3 to 5 days. We've got a great team that mans that inbox. If you email me asking for a password reset, I'm going to direct you to their email address. However, keep in mind, we are not your IT department, so there's some things that we can't help with. If you've got errors on a spreadsheet that you're trying to upload, or with your operating system talking to CMTS, that's something that would need to go through your IT division. So CMTS is used for online reporting, and to get that started, you've got to complete a filing agreement. And then you've got to get your property and your buildings and your units set up in CMTS. We at the department set up the property, and then it's the owner's responsibility to go in and add the buildings and the units. And you want to be sure that you do that with diligence and make sure you have the right square footages, the right units numbers, that sort of a thing, because that's what we're going to use going forward when we monitor or have a physical inspection, or when anybody with the department has to do anything pertaining to the development. That's what we're going to look at. There are some CMTS user guidelines and resources, like how to attach documents in CMTS, how to upload the unit upload instructions and specifications. The online reporting that's completed through CMTS is the annual owner's compliance report, which is due April 30th of every year. So if you are an owner or a management company or an on-site person and you're not on this task already, that might be something to kind of make a note about to handle later, but before April 30th. A quarterly vacancy report, which is due on the 10th of January, April, July, and October. I always forget if it's June or July. And those are due, and those are used by the department. So make sure that you're keeping an eye on those and calendaring those deadlines. And then the unit status report, which should always kind of be maintained in case there's an event of a natural disaster where we might need to have persons housed quickly. The vacancy clearinghouse that we share with low-income Texans that reach out to us is also linked to those unit status reports. So if you haven't updated that in a year, and you had a lot of vacancies a year ago, but now you don't, that's going to be unfair to those low-income Texans who are trying to use that resource. The CMTS attachment system is also our virtual filing cabinet. So there might be things that you're thinking, why did Kara upload that in there? Well, that's probably why, because I wanted to be sure that no matter what, that never fell off the radar, and that it was a response. Maybe I responded through email, but I thought, well, this is an important enough thing that if Isela goes into your CMTS account, she might need to know this information, or a future monitor or corrective action review, so that you can have all that information handy without anybody having to dig through. Kind of prevents some back and forth as well, and helps everybody work a little more cohesively. So things that are in there, will depend on your program, but Isela mentioned the land use restriction agreement, or LURA. That is definitely something that we like to see in there. If you're an older property, it's probably not in there, but if you need it, we can put it in there. One of the important things with CMTS is that within 10 days of a change in the contact information, you need to update CMTS. It should be current and correct, so that when we reach out to a development, or when anybody at the department reaches out to a development or an owner entity, we get the right person. This helps when we do monitoring reviews. This helps when we have corrective action reviews, or utility allowance reviews, or physical inspections. And then it helps the other divisions at the department as well, because there needs to be contact information that we can use, and we know we can get in touch with, the ownership entity or the management company. This is also something that's shared with complainants, and it will compound the complaint if the ownership entity listed is not a number that the complainant can get in touch with the entity. That generally results in calls back, and it kind of further delays completion of things. Failure to comply and failure to maintain an updated and correct CMTS is an issue of noncompliance. You want to be sure that, if possible, you have 3 different contacts. There's a way to put in a property manager email address and contact. Then there's an ownership entity email and contact. then there's a management company email and contact. If the ownership and management are truly the same person and it is the only person, then we would expect to see those be the same thing. But if you have a third person that you can list as a management company person, or have two people involved in the ownership, list both of those, one under ownership and one under management, so that everybody is notified, so that if somebody is on vacation or out of the office, they're not missing these communications from the department, because they are only emailed to the 3 contacts listed in CMTS. We will not send mailed letters, and we do not email letters to the owners. So all official correspondence will be uploaded into the attachment system. And it is not something that you'll get in the mail. I know we get that question sometimes, that, well, I didn't receive anything in the mail, so I didn't know you were coming. The CMTS contact information for the property should include the property's physical address and the correct phone number. This is what we're going to use when we contact the property while we're out kind of in the field doing inspections and reviews. If we can't reach the on-site staff, or the office is closed and we need to call, and we call and it goes to a management office, that doesn't help anybody, because we're in Lubbock, Texas. We need to talk to the actual property, not go through kind of the runaround of reaching somebody at a corporate office. Same thing with these properties when they're built. A lot of times it's the corner of 16th and 25 Mile Avenue. Well, that's good and fine when you're under construction, but as soon as you've got, a 911 address or a permanent address, it needs to be updated in CMTS. I know a lot of properties don't have a phone number in the very beginning, but as soon as they do, it needs to get uploaded and added. That helps all of us at the department, so that we can reach out to the actual property and not call, a disconnected number, or a number that was used for lease up and that is not used now that they're in operations. I can go on and on about that, because I have gotten stuck at a weird place with the wrong address to a property before, but I will not delay the training. So TAC 10.602 explains that the owner is responsible for providing the department with current contact information, including addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, and that this is the owner's responsibility to ensure that it's correct and current. So that is why, we say that this is, when Isela introduced this and kind of gave the TDHCA inspection or expectations, it's the owner's responsibility. So a lot of times you'll hear us refer to the owner, and the owner's going to say, well, I don't do that. I have somebody that does that. That's fine, but they're kind of a branch off of that owner, so that it all kind of goes back to the owner as the trunk of the compliance tree. So the department is going to notify owners of upcoming reviews and instances of noncompliance and inspections, and a lot of other divisions will notify through CMTS. So the department is going to rely solely on the information supplied by the owner in the CMTS system to meet this requirement. And again, it's the owner's responsibility to ensure that at all times such information is current, accurate, and complete. Correspondence sent to an email or physical address shown in CMTS will be deemed as delivered to the owner. So it is really important that that stays current and correct. The TDHCA correspondence is only uploaded into the compliance monitoring and tracking system. Ownership and management should check CMTS regularly to verify that nothing got missed, that the contact information is correct, and that the attachment system is kind of being maintained as it should be. You also want to make sure that the owner contact is an owner contact and not an extension of the property management company. It needs to be an actual owner, and I think Isela talks about this a little bit later on today about why that's important. Management needs to receive the automated email notices, but it is vital that the owner also receive those notices, because the owner is ultimately responsible for any non-compliance. And the owner would be subject to administrative penalties and or debarment for non-compliance. So they need to receive and review notices and supervise corrections by management. Here's what CMTS will look like when you log in the attachment system. So it would have a whole lot more in most cases. And this is what our end looks like. So if yours is a little bit different, that might be why. But it's going to list all the attachments, and you'll be able to go through. You can search by type. You can see, who got uploaded to what. If you think, oh, well, Kara sent me something, you'd want to look over here to see, my name or my abbreviated name there. The attachment system is used by a lot of divisions. And again, this is the digital filing cabinet for the property. So it is important that it's monitored regularly and that when there's something new uploaded, it's addressed. A lot of our items don't have very lengthy deadlines. When we notify you of a monitoring review, it's going to be 15 days. Some of the stuff that Isela sends out has a 10-day turnaround or a shorter turnaround, and complaints have a 5-day turnaround. So there's a lot of different things that have very short turnarounds. So if somebody's monitoring this and checking it, then it's going to help you avoid missing those deadlines. When documentation is uploaded into CMTS, only the email addresses associated with the property, the ownership entity, and the management company will be notified by email. If the company or the ownership group wants to have an umbrella email, they can do that. Again, we are not an IT department, so this would be something you would have to get with your IT folks and figure out. But you need to be sure that the actual owner is listed as an email contact in that umbrella email, so that there is, the good opportunity for them to get the communication from the department and not just a management company or on-site staff. So when I'm talking about an umbrella email, a lot of folks have a compliance@propertymanagement.com, and it includes, whoever needs to be involved with that properties or with the compliance for that property or the ownership of that property. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about an umbrella email. It's going to be one that has several others tied to it. When you get an attachment, you're going to get, when CMTS is uploaded with an attachment, you're going to get an email that looks something like this. And it's going to say that TDHCA staff has uploaded a new attachment, or whomever has uploaded a new attachment. And it's going to give you a little bit of description. It's going to give you the link to reporting, so you can easily click that and log into CMTS. And a lot of us try to be as detailed as we can in the short description that we're given. But you still want to look at the report and make sure that you don't wait until, like this one has action required by May 13th. So you wouldn't want to pull that open on May 12th, because it might be stuff that's going to take you a week or two to get ready, or the full 90 days. So in this case, that's a 90-day window. So you would want to look at these items when they're uploaded so that you have time to ask questions, reach out to the department staff that uploaded the document or requested the communication. If you've not received a user ID and password from the department, there are 2 steps required to initiate compliance reporting. You want to read, complete, and submit the filing agreement. You can enter your own buildings and units directly into CMTS, and we have instructions for that. You'll submit these things to cmts.requests@tdhca.texas.gov, and the request will be processed within 3 to 5 business days. Again, we've got a great team that mans that inbox, and so they will respond accordingly. And they're usually pretty timely and efficient on that. The filing agreement is going to look similar to this. I believe this is an older version. The newest version is available in your resources tab. But initially, you're going to put the property name, address, owner organization, the CMTS ID, the city and zip code, name of owner's representative. This should be the owner. This is the person that the department will contact as the ownership. So this should be the person or the group that is going to sign this form and is listed in the land use restriction agreement as the ownership entity. Then you can assign an administrator of accounts, and the owner is saying that we want Cara Poli designated as the administrator of the account. Here's her name, her email, and her organization, and it should begin on this day. That agreement is going to start that day. So if you put that I need to be effective on May 1st, the CMTS folks are not going to set that up April 15th. They're going to set it up May 1st. So you want to be sure that if somebody needs access sooner, that date is handled sooner. Oh, yeah, this is the person that's going to have the ability to submit the annual owner's compliance reporting, quarterly reports. They'll have the same functions as a manager user, but a whole lot more options as well. An owner and administrator have the same rights within CMTS. So you want to be sure that they're people that actually need that and understand that responsibility, and will handle that accordingly. They can also reset the manager password. So a manager should reach out to an administrator of accounts or an owner to get a password reset. An owner or administrator of accounts is going to have to reach out to us to get a password reset. You're also going to want to tell us why this happened. Is it a new property? Is it an ownership change, management company change, third-party consultant? what is the situation. So you're going to tell us that. And then you're going to tell us, does that administrator of accounts already have a TDHCA portfolio? And if they do, you'll say yes. This is going to help prevent having multiple people or the same person with multiple levels of login, and just help them kind of keep that streamlined. If the owner wants a separate login, they can do that. I think we would all kind of encourage that so that the owner has the opportunity to watch CMTS and manage that as their expectations are required. But that is not required. If they want to put that on a management company, that's fine. The administrator of accounts is currently assigned to the property. Would you like to replace the existing one? So if you're replacing a management company or a consultant or an entity, you are going to want to answer yes on that so that it does remove that old person. But if you're adding somebody, then you wouldn't want to do that. And then the owner is going to sign the form, and then the administrator of accounts that's being added is going to sign the form. So if you take over a portfolio of 100 properties, you're going to have a lot of these that get uploaded and completed because they are property specific and need to be submitted to that email address or through CMTS. If you don't have CMTS, you would set it up with that email or don't have access yet. But it does have to be the owner that signs it, and then the administrator of accounts designee that signed the form. If it's unsigned, it's going to be returned to you as incomplete, and it's going to delay the process. So our goal is to work swiftly and efficiently, and if things are unsigned or incomplete, then that does prevent that from happening. I already said this, but the owner or administrator of accounts can reset a manager password. But the department has to reset the owner or administrator of accounts passwords. We did have, like I said, a webinar on CMTS processes, tips, and troubleshooting information. I would encourage anybody who manages or works in CMTS to watch that. We also have some online reporting webinars that are available. The compliance program training presentations link is there. And then our YouTube channel link is there. And then we've got our CMTS training handout that's available there as well. So I'm actually going to scooch out of the way and let Manuel have control of the computer and the presentation. He's going to talk to us about the physical inspections piece of compliance.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Manuel Pena, Manager of Physical Inspections with the Texas Department of Housing. And I'm going to talk about the physical inspection portion of TDHCA. So how do I move?
I think it's already over here.
Okay.
There it is. Oh, go the other way.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Trying to shift gears here and learn her system here. So welcome, everyone. I'm talking about the physical inspection portion. I'm going to talk about NSPIRE, then I'm going to talk about final construction inspections. But first, let's go ahead and jump into NSPIRE. So TDHCA adopted NSPIRE effective January 1st of 2024. And the physical inspection section of the Compliance Division performs inspections of the multifamily developments that are funded through our multifamily programs. The former inspection protocol that we utilized was UPCS. Now, one of the major differences between UPCS and NSPIRE is that NSPIRE prioritizes the health and safety deficiencies over the appearance of the development. That means that if there's deficiencies that we find within the unit, then it's going to have a greater impact on your score. So you really want to make sure that your units, where the residents spend most of their time, are free of health and safety deficiencies. Another change from NSPIRE to UPCS is that the terminology changed from health and safety to life-threatening and severe. We still interchange those terms. We understand that health and safety are severe and life-threatening, but on your report when you receive it, if they're health and safety, it's going to be listed as life-threatening and severe. A life-threatening deficiency presents a high risk of death, and a severe deficiency presents a high risk of permanent disability or serious injury and illness. There's 63 standards that fall within the NSPIRE protocol, and the list can be found at that website. We encourage everyone to look through the standards because there's a ton of deficiencies within each one of those standards. So please read through the standards. There's tons of deficiencies under each one of those standards. It's a major change between UPCS and NSPIRE. Another difference between NSPIRE and UPCS is that NSPIRE has over 300 potential health and safety defects, depending on your development, with more than 100 of those being the 24-hour repair type. Since that's a major change between UPCS and NSPIRE, TDHCA may provide an extension for good cause if requested within 24 hours of the inspection for the life-threatening and severe deficiencies. So at the end of the inspection, when the inspector provides you the health and safety form, and you know there's a ton of deficiencies that may not be able to be repaired within 24 hours, please give us a call, contact us, and we may be able to provide you an extension. We also provide a sample of the NSPIRE checklist on the website listed there. Let's see. So we're going to talk a little bit about final construction and NSPIRE, but I'll talk about final construction later. What triggers the NSPIRE inspection is when the owner requests the final construction inspection. When the owner requests the final construction inspection, be prepared for a long day. We're going to conduct the NSPIRE inspection, and we're also going to conduct the final construction inspection. Depending on the inspector, they'll determine which inspection goes first. Some inspectors like to do the final in the morning and then the NSPIRE in the afternoon, or vice versa. It just depends on the assigned inspector. But keep in mind that these are two separate inspections and should be treated individually. Each inspection will have a corrective action period, a separate corrective action period. Each inspection will have its own report. Please read through the reports and as I said, be prepared for a long day of inspection. And this triggers the NSPIRE inspection. And then after three years after that, we'll conduct the NSPIRE inspection. TDHCA bases the development scores on a 0 to 100 scale, utilizing NSPIRE. You want your scores to be as high as possible. If inspections score on your development below 70, these are going to be required to be inspected more frequently until that score improves. So you want your scores to be as high as possible. If your development scores 50 or less on several occasions, the responsible party may be referred for enforcement for possible debarment. So keep in mind that you want to have your inspection scores as high as possible. And also, you want to have your units score as high as possible as well. Inspections are conducted by department staff, and some are conducted by our department contractor. TDHCA will always select the units and issue the reports. The contractor is only collecting the data for TDHCA. The contracted inspector will conduct the inspection, but we provide them the unit list and the buildings to inspect. Then the contractor will submit the report back to TDHCA, and the TDHCA inspector will issue that report and follow up with a corrective action. So if you have any questions in regards to a contracted inspector, please contact myself or the assigned inspector. Some common deficiencies that we see for NSPIRE are inoperable smoke detectors and their placement requirements, electrical outlets that are stored within 6 foot of a water source that are not GFCI protected, missing damaged outlets or switch cover plates. Carbon monoxide detectors are now required in a unit with fuel burning appliance or has an attached garage. Water heater temperature and pressure relief valves and placement. Those are big changes in NSPIRE. Items stored within 18 inches of a sprinkler assembly. Missing, damaged, expired fire extinguishers, and of course, infestation. And if you have any questions, you can contact me. There's my email address. You can also give me a call and we'll assist with whatever questions you have in regards to NSPIRE. So here's a sample of an inspection report. This report scored high. It's a 95. This is a good inspection report. This is what you want to score. You want to score as high as possible. If your development scores 76 or above, we'll provide to you an owner certification. Keep in mind that this owner certification can only be signed by a representative of the owner. It cannot be signed by on-site staff, maintenance, or regional management. This has to be signed by someone from the ownership structure. We'll also provide you a deficiency report spreadsheet that will list every single deficiency. You'll need to sign that and submit that, upload the certification and the deficiency report spreadsheet to the development's attachment page to ensure that we get this and ensure that all your inspection deficiencies are corrected. Here's an example of a low scoring development. This is a 55. This score is low. If your development scores 75 and below, then the owner is required to submit corrective action for each deficiency in the form of a work order. You can submit an invoice, but we do not accept bids. A bid doesn't verify that the deficiency was corrected. Also, if there's infestation cited, please submit pest control service tickets as well. Acceptable corrective action will allow the inspector to determine if the deficiency is reasonably corrected and the repair was made to sufficiently correct the violation. Acceptable documentation of a work order includes, there's several things that we look at when we receive a work order. You want to ensure that those work orders are completed accurately. We look to see that the action taken is made to ensure that the deficiency is correct. We look at the date of corrective action. We also look for the signature of the person responsible for correcting the deficiency. And as I said, the ownership is required to sign the owner certification. Here's just a list of the things we look for. It's kind of spelled out for you a lot easier. We look for the work order to tell us the identity of the deficiency that's repaired. You need to list the deficiency, the location of the deficiency, and a detailed description of the action taken or the work performed. Single words like done, complete, and repaired are not acceptable. If the deficiency is, for example, a door that's missing a hardware, the report we're going to look for is going to say something to the effect that the door hardware was replaced or the door hardware is repaired and is working. Something brief that will allow the inspector to determine that deficiency has been corrected. Also, you want to ensure that it's signed by the person that's responsible for the repair and it is dated. Here's an example of a good work order. This work order provides the project and unit location, deficiency that's required to be repaired, date and time of completion, and it provides us a detailed description of the action taken. It's also signed and dated. This is what we're looking for if your development scores 75 or below. When we conduct your inspection, you're not going to know which units we're going to inspect. You won't know until the morning that the inspector arrives for inspection. They'll provide you a list of all units that we're going to inspect, but you want to be sure that you notify 100% of your tenants at least 24 hours. That way we can gain access to those developments if we need to conduct those inspections. So now we're going to talk a little bit about final construction inspections. And what is a final construction inspection? So again, the physical inspection section of the compliance division performs these inspections that are funded through the department's multifamily developments. Inspectors conduct final construction inspections prior to the final allocation of department funds. These inspections are scheduled within 30 days of receiving the request. However, if we have a development that requests an inspection that may be in El Paso or in the Panhandle or in the Valley, and if we don't have any inspectors in the area, it could be a little bit longer than that. We try to adhere to that 30 days, but if we don't have anybody in the area, it could be a little bit longer than 30 days. Reports are also issued within 45 days of the inspection, but again, please have grace with the inspectors. We are super busy and we have a ton of inspections to complete. We try to adhere to these 30 and 45 days, but sometimes we won't be able to get those reports out within that time. But we try as hard as we can to get that. And if you have any questions or if you've been delayed on a report, you can always give me a call or send me an email, and I'll look into that. We always provide a 90-day corrective action period, and that is outlined in the report. Final construction inspections will ensure that the developments follow the appropriate accessibility standards, comply with all applicable program rules and regulations, and supply all amenities promised at application. Any questions in regards to final construction inspections can be directed to myself or our team lead of construction, Michael Podoloff, and our emails are listed right there. So why do we conduct final construction inspections? We conduct final construction inspections to verify that the owner is in compliance with the construction standards of the 2010 ADA standards, with HUD's 11 exceptions. If your development was constructed for first occupancy after March 13, 1991, you must comply with the Fair Housing Design Act manual as originally written with no safe harbors. This includes units, common areas, and amenities added to the existing building or land under common ownership and continuous with housing otherwise exempt from the Fair Housing Act. The owner is required to submit a final construction inspection request form within 30 days of receiving the final certificate of occupancy. If the deadline is coming up and we need to inspect quickly, more quickly, we may be able to inspect with temporary certificate of occupancies, but that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. So please let us know if you're getting close to a deadline. Our website is available at tdhca.texas.gov, and the construction inspection accessibility checklists are available. Please download the checklist before we conduct an inspection. Those are the checklists that the TDHCA inspector will use to conduct your inspection. Some of the key things that we inspect for are the accessible route, which must extend to the site arrival point, which includes public streets, sidewalks, bus stops, when present, parking lots, including the garages and carports, stairwells, and other common areas in the buildings and spaces. All employee workspaces, for example, are inspected. For example, a maintenance shop. We will inspect those for for ADA accessibility. All leasing interior units and exterior spaces of the units, and all rehabilitations are considered substantial alterations. Cost is not a factor when we consider bringing a building up to current standards. Some of the frequent problems that we see when we conduct these final construction inspections are the required turning spaces that are not present, that are required in the secondary bathrooms and utility rooms. Detached garages and carports are required to have at least one van accessible spot, which must be 98 inches tall. Attached garages are an amenity of the unit, and if provided on a per unit basis are inspected, at least 1 in every 6 accessible garage must be van accessible, which includes the 98-inch vertical clearance at the garage door. Open risers are not allowed for stairs. All stairs must have closed risers. The only exception is the interior existing stairwells when accessible elevator is present. Handrail extensions are required at the top and the bottom. At the top of the stairs, a handrail is required to terminate into a wall, post, or ground. If the handrails are turned and attached to a security railing, it must follow the security railing all the way to the wall or the final post. When doors open to an interior hallway, that hallway minimum width is required to be 42 inches. A 30-inch workspace in the kitchen is required to be directly next to the stove with the bottom hinged oven. If fair housing applies and an elevator is present at your property, the maximum height for all mailboxes is 54 inches. The ADA unit mailboxes are required to be 48 inches, regardless of the standard that applies. Fold-down bathtub seats that require a tool to be removed are not allowed. Exposed pipes that are required to be fully covered, even if the doors are present, for marketing purposes. That's not right.
He explained that to me.
Okay, so exposed pipes are required to be fully covered. So what that means, if you have a cabinet that opens up, the pipes need to be fully covered. Okay. So also, if your accessible units have the cover that closes the exposed pipes, then the pipes are not required to be covered by the pipes are not required to be wrapped. So that's a new one in there. So if you have any questions in regards to that, you can give me a call. So what is considered corrective action? The detailed corrective action is going to be found in the report letter. So we advise everyone to read the reports as quickly and as detailed as possible. The owner should contact the report issuer if there's any questions on the corrective action. It is the owner's responsibility to remedy all issues. Failure to submit detailed architectural certifications can cause deficiencies to remain open or uncorrected. Photographs that do not reflect measurements as required can also result in delays. So please ensure that your photographs, if you send photographs need to be taken from a far away that shows the whole room and it shows the tape measured. So the reports that we provide detail in regards to how to submit corrective action. And if you have any questions, please contact the assigned inspector. So here's an example of what a final construction report cover letter looks like. There's a lot of information in the report, as stated. Please read through the report. These reports are very detailed, provide a lot of information. The corrective action explains how to address each issue. This is the example of one of the instructions for owner's response. There's a lot of detail in there. And if you need an extension, there's also an extension request email that you should request. If you know that you're not going to be able to make those corrections within the 90-day corrective action period, we may, for good cause, be able to extend that for an additional 90 days. We also double check your unit and common use amenities. We're going to ensure that the threshold of points that is committed to during application are present at the development. Keep in mind that the amenities, the point threshold, some of these amenities can change from time to time as long as the threshold of points remains the same. These are all in your LURA, so please be familiar with your LURA and your application. And that's all I have for final constructions, and if there's any other questions, you can definitely let me know.
Amy, did we have any?
We do have some questions, Manuel. The first one is USDA is giving 10 days to correct life and safety violations under NSPIRE protocol. Why is TDHCA only giving 24 hours?
That's just what the standard has always been. It's under NSPIRE, and we stick to what the standards are. So we do provide an extension if there are any extenuating circumstances for, such as hiring a third-party contractor to come conduct the inspections. But TDHCA's has always been 24-hour repairs and a 72-hour deadline to submit the corrective action owner certification. That is not a rule that has ever changed with TDHCA. It's been like that since day one, since I've been here.
The next one is, since final construction inspections are scheduled within 30 days of receiving the request, at what point towards the end of construction should we request the inspection? 80% complete, 90% complete, or do we have to wait till we have COs?
Yeah, you want to wait until you have your complete certificate of occupancies, because if we come out and conduct an inspection on an unfinished product, it's going to be cited in the report, and there'll need to be corrective action. So if you have temporary certificate of occupancies, you can give us a call. It'll be on a case-by-case basis. We can inspect with temporary COs as well. Like I said, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. We just want to make sure that we're not going out and inspecting an unfinished product, because it will be cited for deficiencies.
Next one is, can you explain the new rule regarding shower rod and the shower tub combo?
Shower rod and shower tub combo. Is that NSPIRE or final construction?
I am not sure. I'm going to send your email to them and they can email you this and
yeah, we have
you
two
guys
different
can.
standards that I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about NSPIRE, and I'm also discussing final construction. So a little bit more detail would be best. If you send me an email.
They're saying for NSPIRE, not final construction.
And what is the question in regards to shower rods?
Shower rods or shower tub combos?
Okay. Don't know about the shower tub combos, but I can talk a little bit about shower rods. I think that we've had this question posed to us before. The question was, is a vacant unit required to have a shower curtain for privacy purposes? One of the NSPIRE inspection protocols requires privacy in the unit. If we conduct an inspection in an occupied unit and there is not privacy, which means like a shower curtain, then we may be able to potentially cite that under NSPIRE. I hope this answers the question.
Well, they said they did get a finding for not having a shower rod, so maybe that was the reason behind it.
That's correct. So under NSPIRE, if privacy is not provided, then it could be a deficiency under NSPIRE. But on the other side of that coin, if it's a vacant unit and there's no shower curtains or shower rods, we're not going to cite that. However, we can potentially cite the privacy deficiency under NSPIRE if it's an occupied unit.
They said that they felt they got this in a vacant unit. Again, email you about that, correct?
Yeah, send me an email and provide as much detail as possible.
Yeah. And she said, thank you. And that gets us caught up on that.
All righty, cool. I'll be around for any other questions if you have some more. Thank you.
Well, I went the wrong direction. Okay, me take back over. So the next thing we're going to talk about are file monitoring reviews. And this is where the Compliance Monitoring Division comes out and monitors the property. We monitor for long-term compliance with the requirements of the multifamily housing programs funded by the TDHCA. What we're going to review is, it's discussed in detail in a monitoring review webinar, but we're going to touch on a few basics today. And how often is going to be at least once every 3 years in most cases. There are instances where we would come out sooner. And there are some programming allowances that once they pass a certain threshold of the term, that we could go out every 5 years instead of every 3 years. So the timeline, a lead monitor is going to upload a notification letter into the CMTS attachment system. The notification is going to tell you a date and an approximate time that will be at the development, and it's going to ask you to complete a unit status report and a monitor review questionnaire. Used to, if you've been around a long time and you're here for a refresher, our letters used to detail out what we needed. They don't do that anymore. The monitor review questionnaire is going to drive that, and it's going to say, if you answered yes to this, please submit to the department this for review. So you're going to want to pay close attention to that. We have a webinar for that. Once the pre-on-site or pre-review documentation is received, the monitor is going to prep for the review. When we send that notification out, that's usually 15 business days prior to the review date. So there is a very tight timeline. So you want to be sure that you've got, as kind of your regular operating policies and procedures, that you've got a mechanism to have this stuff readily available in the event that you're notified of a review. Monitors are going to conduct the review, either a desk review or an on-site review in accordance with program requirements. The lead monitor is then going to issue a monitoring report that's going to tell you if there was any non-compliance and offer technical assistance. Same as the physical inspection corrective action period, we have a 90-day corrective action period, which is outlined in the letter, and that doesn't start until the letter's issued. So if I conduct a review today, but I don't get the letter out till next Friday, the 90 days is driven by the letter date, the monitoring report date. This can be extended for good cause for an additional 90 days or up to an additional 90 days, but written approval has to be received and requested. The request has to be received in writing before the extension can be granted. And if it's that you forgot about it and it's due May 13th and you pulled it on May 10th, that may not be considered good cause, and there may be some additional repercussions for that. Please make sure that on-site staff are aware that we are coming for an on-site visit and that it may be anytime during the week scheduled. If your company requires that somebody from ownership or management is present during a monitoring review or a physical inspection, I would encourage you to take a look at that week and say, man, that's a really good week for me to go out and do some site visits in whatever area that property is in. We don't have a requirement for somebody from ownership or a management company to be present. But sometimes that's something that you guys have, and so that's perfectly acceptable. But understand that we are out there and we are working on state budgets, and so we are not going to delay a trip if we get ahead of schedule. So if we're out in an area and we're able to move up a review, we're going to move that up. For the monitoring review, during a desk review, the development is going to be notified and then have 24 hours from that notification to upload tenant files. If it is an on-site review, the monitor is going to need a place to set up their laptops. Please make sure there are outlets available and that the outlets work. The lead monitor is going to give you a file list when we get to the property, and you're going to pull those files while we're getting our computers set up. Make sure that you do that timely, that the time to go through those files has passed at this point. And if it takes more than a reasonable amount of time as determined by the monitors that are on site, we're going to come to wherever you're pulling files and say, hey, we've got to get this rolling. Where are the tenant files? And so that you're going to want to do that pretty quickly. The monitors are then going to review the tenant files, and then if there's additional documentation needed, we're going to request that. And so we'll look at all of that while we're there. If needed, the monitor might do a brief exit interview and tell you, hey, we observed this in the tenant files. This might be a good area, to improve, or hey, your tenant files look great. We really appreciate that. Anything that might be of benefit to hear right then. Otherwise, it's going to be listed in the monitoring report. When we get back or after the monitoring review, we will conduct a final review of all documents. So I know when I'm out, I'll say, hey, I'm going to issue the report, but I've got to go back and make sure I didn't miss any steps when I prepared and that everything, was properly submitted and everything. And then the report gets issued. There are kind of two reports. There's a no issues of noncompliance report with or without technical assistance. And then there's an events of noncompliance report with or without technical assistance. If there were no issues of noncompliance, we're going to issue that report. There might be technical assistance in it that you're going to want to pay attention to, because during your next review, those items may become non-compliance if they're not addressed, Or it might be a change in monitoring rules or a change in a process, or, if you were monitored in 23 or the first half of 2024, there was somehow the HOTMA guidance was listed in the technical assistance section of all letters. If there were events of noncompliance, then we're going to list those in a letter, detail those in a detailed noncompliance report, and then we're also going to have technical assistance. For the reports with noncompliance, the technical assistance section is incredibly important because it might further detail what an issue of noncompliance was caused by or what would fix a noncompliance issue. So you want to be sure that you're reading through these. I know all these letters look the same, but they are different. They are very property and review specific, as I'm sure the physical inspection letters are as well. Even though they might look all the same, they're going to be the minutia of it, or the nitty gritty is going to be different based on what happened at the review or the inspection. It is the owner or owner's representative's responsibility to ask questions they might have about the monitoring review. Reach out to the monitor sooner rather than later to get those questions answered. And if Amy did your review, don't email me for questions, because I'm going to defer that back to Amy. I was not part of the preparation. I was not part of the review. I'm not equipped to answer those questions. So first off, reach out to the monitor that conducted the review. If the development, ownership, or management staff would like a detailed exit interview after reviewing the monitoring report and the noncompliance report, that would be the time to ask for it. I think most of us are pretty receptive to that. If there's something that sometimes it's better to hear it verbally versus reading it or to ask your questions. So definitely do that if that's something that's needed. Sometimes it's not needed if the monitoring report is clear and everything's been explained correctly. So some technical assistance, like I said, might be because of rule changes, or if the rules and requirements are not being adhered to. We might note that in TA. Issues that could become future areas of noncompliance if they're not addressed. So you want to make sure you do read through those and look at that. If we find imperfect documentation in tenant files, we will probably note that during the technical assistance section of the monitoring report. Details that would further explain issues of noncompliance, or anything else the monitor wants to make the owner aware of from the review. So we want to be sure that you guys are taking a look at that technical assistance, and that any of the items that would help somebody be better equipped for future monitoring reviews or for operations or meeting those rules and requirements, that those adjustments are made. So the monitoring letter is issued. It details the issues of noncompliance if there are any. It's going to explain the type, the reason, and any specific corrective action required. The corrective action deadline identified in the report is going to be 90 days. That can be extended for an additional 90 days for good cause, but approval is needed before that can happen. The monitoring report is going to look something like this. It's going to tell you on pages 1 and 2 that, hey, we conducted a review. If you need an extension, email this address. If you submit corrective action early, email this address. And it's going to have the corrective action due date. We would recommend completing a cover letter when you submit your corrective action that kind of tells us, hey, this goes with this, this goes with this. There are items, sometimes you have to submit a new unit status report, and there's not really a way to do that other than to update the information. So a cover letter that's dated tells us, hey, you've addressed this, you've corrected that, and it gives us kind of a starting point there. If there's outstanding noncompliance from previous reviews, that's also going to be included in this letter. The second page is going to tell you, or the third page in most cases, is going to tell you who conducted the review, when it was conducted. If there was site staff present, we sometimes list those folks. It's going to outline the issues of noncompliance and what units those affected. And then there's a place for technical assistance. Then there's going to be the list of files that we reviewed. And then if we spot checked any files, it would be under that. And then there's some additional tips and links listed there that would be beneficial. Some of those are very general, like compliance monitoring rules. Some of them go towards training. Some of them go, if you need to have an ownership transfer, or if you want to join our email list, there's some different options there, or some different resources there. These pages the next pages are going to detail the non-compliance that is identified. So you can see there, oh, it doesn't pop out. There's the, if there's a unit number associated with it, there's the actual finding of non-compliance, the non-compliance date, correction status, and then if it's corrected, it would have a corrected date, the reason, the corrective action required, and then it has a penalty or a potential administrative penalty. Those are something that if you have the noncompliance and it doesn't get corrected and you end up in a referral situation, that's going to be a question for ESELA. That's not something that I'm going to be able to answer on the front end, but those are there as a resource, as just kind of an idea of what you would be looking at if you didn't correct it and it did go through an enforcement meeting. So communication is key for success. You want to make sure, again, that CMTS is current and correct and has information for all parties affiliated with the property. You want to ask questions when you're given the opportunity to do so, like if the monitor conducts an exit interview or when we tell you, hey, we're wrapped up, we didn't really have anything that we noted. Do you have any questions for us? That would be a time where you could ask some questions. If the monitor has time, they may be able to answer them. They may not have time, depending on how tight their schedule is. So it may be something that they say, hey, can you give me a call or email me early, whatever day I'll be back in the office. When you get the monitoring report, you want to make sure that you read through that and that you read through the detailed noncompliance report. A lot of issues with referrals or corrective action incompleteness could have been mitigated by somebody, kind of slowing down and just reading through it line by line, because we do try to be very clear and very concise in those reports so that you have the resources that you need and the information you need to fully correct an issue of noncompliance. You want to make sure that you respond to monitoring reports as required in order to avoid being referred unnecessarily. So you want to be sure when you get those letters that you calendar the due date and that you set yourself a reminder however far in advance you want to do that after you look at what issues of noncompliance there are. Owners and compliance staff should look at the corrective action before it's submitted. If on-site staff puts together a response, that what we find is that if the owner and the management company don't review that first, it might result in undue delays and issues or an unnecessary referral. So having more eyes on it is definitely helpful. If you don't agree with the issues of noncompliance, or if you think, oh my gosh, that form is in the file, I can't believe they didn't see it, or whatever the case may be, you contact the monitor first. And then if the monitor is if you and the monitor are not able to come to a decision, then is when we would loop in the manager, Amy Hammond, or the director, Wendy Quackenbush. If you have income and asset questions, we could reach out to the National Center for Housing Management. Sometimes you guys do stump us and we do get questions and we reach out to them for some guidance. If you have housing tax credit specific program concerns, we can reach out to the Internal Revenue Service or IRS for those help with those questions. And then for multifamily direct loan specific program concerns, we would reach out to the HUD field office. So that's for like home ARP, National Housing Trust Fund, neighborhood stabilization, those sorts of programs. We have done a mini webinar on the monitor review process, corrective action processes, online reporting, physical inspections, the new entrance interview questionnaire, which has actually been updated from that link that you see there. So there's lots of resources on that training and presentations website that you can review. If you have a review and you're like, man, I'm new to this and I really want to know more details about what's coming for this monitoring review, I would encourage you to watch that webinar where Amy and I have talked through what is coming, what to expect. It's going to help ease your nervousness and better prepare you for those monitoring reviews. For 811, the monitoring reviews are a little bit different. They are conducted separately from the other program monitoring reviews. These are conducted annually by the management company. We do have a specific 811 monitor, and so he would be the resource for those questions. And he, I believe, may log in for our open forum at 11 o'clock. So if you have questions for 811, you can definitely ask those and we can try to get you an answer today. These are conducted remotely, not on site. And since they're conducted annually by management company portfolio, then they are conducted every year. There is a time period of scope, which is where the start and end dates of focus are. The reviews are for all properties under that management company portfolio, and they're conducted at the same time. Since they're conducted separately from other multifamily program reviews, the 811 reviews are going to focus on the 811 program. I believe it even has a separate, or is going to have a separate questionnaire that's specific to the 811 program. Monitoring reviews for both programs are conducted, for other programs are conducted every 3 years at a different time and date. So you don't want to say, oh, I just had an 811 review. I'm not going to see anybody for 3 more years. Your 811 will be again the next year. And then your regular on-site desk monitoring review is going to be on the timeline that's prescribed by your program. Coincidentally, both reviews may be conducted at the same time, but they are separate. They're separate reviews. They have separate corrective action periods. They will have separate monitoring reports, kind of like the physical inspection and the construction inspection. They are separate, similar but separate. Since these reviews are conducted remotely and not on site, you will upload your documentation through the ServView system, not CMTS. If you do not have 811, ignore this slide because this might not make sense to you. But if you have 811, you should be familiar with the ServView system. Or if you're not and you're new to 811, then you will become familiar with it. All documentation requested is needed, focusing on the period of scope. So there will be a date, timeline, or date range identified, and that's going to be what you submit. You're going to have to, they're going to look at tenant files, ledgers, that sort of a thing, and those must be submitted for that review. Approximately 1 month prior to the 811 monitoring review, a notification letter is sent. On the first of the month following the notification letter, all documentation is due. During the review, an 811 monitoring review person is going to, all the properties are notified by the compliance monitor. At the same time, the 811 Administration Division is going to provide feedback on the reporting of available units, outcomes of applications, and written policies and procedures. Within about 45 days after the submission, a monitoring letter with a detailed report will be uploaded separately to each property. A 90-day corrective action period is provided, but may be extended for good cause. During this time, a peer-to-peer meeting is offered in place of an exit interview. There is a 10-day period is given after the review of corrective action if items were left a little bit incomplete. Any uncorrected noncompliance is referred for administrative penalties, and referrals are by property, and any penalty would be assessed against the owning entity. The other piece of compliance monitoring is complaints. We get called when the tenants have a complaint process if they feel that they have a complaint against a property. And so the Texas Administrative Code Section 1.2 outlines those requirements and how the complaint process is handled. Within 15 business days, the complainant will receive a response from the department, either that the complaint has been resolved or that it will be resolved, or if there's additional information needed. After that, the complainant will be notified at least quarterly until final resolution. Please note that once a complaint is entered into the department's complaint submission system, all information entered could be subject to a public information request. The department will request documentation from the owner and the complainant if necessary. Upon receipt of the response, it's reviewed, and then we issue a response to the complaint. So if there's no issue, no noncompliance found, the complaint is closed and everybody's notified of such. If there's an issue identified, there is a corrective action required. And sometimes it'll be a 90-day corrective action period, but please make necessary adjustments upon receipt within 3 or 5 days. If it's a rent issue or something that needs a faster turnaround time, we're going to ask you to look at it quicker, but to submit the response within 90 days. And then sometimes it's not within the department jurisdiction, and that's what our letter is going to indicate. Complaint requests should be regarded with the same timeliness and attention as any other request from the department. Please don't disregard those. And if you have questions or have information to offer, you may want to email or call the monitor that's issued the request for documentation as soon as you receive it, so that there's kind of a way to hear both sides of the story and make an informed decision on or review of the documentation. The Fair Housing Division also has some review responsibilities. This is outlined in subchapter G of the Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 10. There's a section about the affirmative marketing requirements, and then there's a section that pertains to written policies and procedures. If you email us a question about that, we're going to refer you to Fair Housing. So if you have a question about affirmative marketing or written policies and procedures, you can go ahead and take the middleman out and send that to fair.housing@tdhca.texas.gov. They may request documentation periodically from an owner. When you get their request, you want to be sure that you're looking at that the same as you would a letter from a compliance monitor or a physical inspection. officer so that you can know that that is due, they need a response, they need corrective action, all the same things, because you can get referred if you disregard those requests as well. They will then respond with a no issues letter or an issues that need to be corrected, which will then have a corrective action timeline of 90 days. Or if the owner fails to respond, that will be referred to the enforcement committee. So the next thing we're going to talk about is corrective action deadlines, unless, Amy, you have anything to add or any questions.
No, we're going good. We do have a question, but it's for Manuel, so we'll wait.
Okay. So corrective action deadlines, I know we've talked about that through a bunch of sections today. We will provide a notice in CMTS that includes a corrective action deadline. If there's an imminent hazard or threat to health and safety, it's going to be 30 days. Annual owner's compliance report is going to be 30 days. National standards for physical inspection in real estate, or NSPIRE, is going to have those life-threatening and severe deficiencies that are required to be corrected within 24 hours. And I think Manuel said that the corrective action is due within 72 hours of that. And then there are some other moderate deficiencies that are 30 days and then 60 days and 90 days. File monitoring noncompliance is going to have a 90-day corrective action period. Complaints and fair housing requests are going to be specific to the matter. You need to track your deadlines. There are no reminders sent. We don't reach out to you and say, hey, this is due tomorrow, please make sure it's uploaded. We track our deadlines. You should be tracking those as well, because you're going to get the letter that says, hey, no response was sent in, here's your referral information, that sort of a thing, if you don't submit as required. You want to supply all requested documentation no later than the deadline set by the group that outlined it. It could be compliance, physical inspections, fair housing, or a complaint review. That is the last day of the corrective action period, and so it needs to be uploaded on or before that date. If clarification is necessary to complete the corrective action, you want to contact the issuing monitor or staff as soon as possible. The department may have the ability to extend the corrective action period if allowed federally or under state law, but it has to be for good cause, and you have to request that. You can't just say, oh, I didn't get it done, here's my letter asking for that as my corrective action response. The department recommends submitting a dated cover letter explaining the documentation submitted. That just helps the corrective action reviewer know yes, you looked at everything. Yes, here's what goes with what. And it just helps the review go more smoothly. To submit corrective action, you will upload that into the compliance monitoring and tracking system attachment system. Failure to submit complete and satisfactory corrections on or before the corrective action deadline will result in referral to the department's enforcement committee, issuance of Form 8823 to the IRS if you are in a housing tax credit program within the compliance period, and it will be considered in future funding decisions. So don't just think, oh, this is my one property that's an issue. If the owner of that property applies for future funding, the department is going to look at what's happened at all their other properties as part of a previous participation review to make sure that we're making good and sound decisions as far as the applications for funding. If the deadline is not enough time, you can submit a corrective action request for extension. You can also submit a corrective action plan. Maybe somebody's not going to move out for 6 months because their lease isn't up, but they are moving out when their lease is up, and you need to occupy the unit with a new qualified household. You could submit a corrective action plan. That does not stop the 8823 issuance if it's a tax credit community, but it does stop the referral process. It slows that down so that you can, if you say, hey, we're going to have that ready, they move out August 31st, we're going to have it ready by the end of September and hopefully occupied within that 30 days. That's going to be what we're going to look at as your kind of a new deadline. The 8823s would then be revised and sent in as corrected. Once that's corrected, if you miss that corrective action plan deadline, that's when the referral process would begin for that property. This is not always something that's applicable. If you tell us that the tenant rights and resources guide is not posted and it's, it can't be posted because of something, that's going to be less of something that should have a corrective action plan. There's certain things that there's no reason they can't be completed within those 90 days, but there are things that can't be completed within the 90 days sometimes. What we will do with the corrective action submission is after that 90 days, we will look at it within 45 days, and then we will issue a response. If all issues of noncompliance are addressed and corrected, then you'll get a closeout letter and nothing further is needed. If everything is addressed but not quite corrected, we'll give you what's called a 10-day letter that gives you 10 additional days to allow complete corrections to be uploaded. If that 10-day deadline is not met, then it will follow the referral or whatever proceedings come next. If the say you had a noncompliance letter and it had unit issues and a utility allowance issue, and the only thing you addressed was the unit issues, you would not get that 10-day allowance on the utility allowance issues because you did not address that in your original response. If no response is received, the department will issue a letter referring the development to the enforcement committee. If the corrective action submission, either initially or within the 10-day window, does not fully correct the issues of noncompliance cited in the review, the development will be referred to the enforcement committee. For a previous participation review, this is what happens when anybody affiliated with the development submits an application for new funds or an award of new funds or a transfer of ownership. This is conducted, you can see the citations for those if you have questions about where the specific rules are. If there's a monitoring review open at the time of a previous participation review, we get emailed and asked to close that out within 7 days so that the PPR review can happen timely and a response be issued. Noncompliance that was corrected after the corrective action period and that has not been corrected is taken into consideration for a 3-year period starting at the date of the correction. Monitoring reviews or with noncompliance corrected after the corrective action period will result in events of noncompliance during a PPR assessment, and failure to submit any type of corrective action response during the designated corrective action period is also plays a significant role in the PPR assessment. So now I'm going to pass this back over to Isela unless we have questions. Amy, I didn't see anything pop up.
Nope, just still the one for Manuel, and I can ask it real quick.
Okay.
Manuel, does 2010 ADA standards apply to just public areas or all amenity areas and accessible units?
That's a great question. That would probably be best to send me an email.
Okay, I'll send them your email.
And we'll respond that way. Thank you. Good question.
All right, our next section is enforcement, both administrative penalties and debarment. That's one of my primary job focuses here at TDHCA. So TDHCA, major priority for us is compliance. That's what we've been discussing this entire training. But we want our owners to succeed, and that's why we're doing this training, to kind of help you understand what to expect so that you can provide decent, safe, affordable housing. However, there are going to be times when you do not submit complete or timely corrective documentation. And when that happens, like Kara just mentioned a few slides ago, there are 3 primary things that can happen. First is referral to the enforcement committee for potential administrative penalties and or debarment. And those rules are outlined at 10 Texas Administrative Code Chapter 2. Second is issuance of Form 8823 if it's a housing tax credit property within the compliance period. And 3, consideration during previous participation reviews for future funding decisions. What are administrative penalties? Some of you might have been referred in the past. They are authorized by statute at Texas Government Code 2306.041. There is a matrix with specific penalty amounts outlined at 10 Texas Administrative Code 2.302K. It's divided by various different program types, and it's considered in conjunction with a series of statutory factors that are at Texas Government Code 2302.042. The maximum violation for the maximum penalty for any violation is $1,000 per day. To assess an administrative penalty, TDHCA first needs to offer an informal conference with our enforcement committee. And that process is also outlined at Texas Administrative Code Chapter 2. And if assessed, like we talked about previously, the penalty would be against the owning entity. Next, what is debarment? Debarment is also authorized by statute. It's in the Government Code 2306.0504. Who can be debarred? There are a lot of different categories, but unlike with administrative penalty, which is against the owning entity, the department can consider different levels of responsibility for each individual responsible party in control when they're considering debarment. Additionally, it can include both entities, so a limited partnership, a limited liability corporation, but it can also include individual natural persons in control of those entities. So it's really important to keep that in mind because there is a personal component here when we're talking about debarment. It does include individual natural persons who control those entities. A question we get frequently is, what is debarment? So debarment would be the department placing the debarred individual on our debarment list. And they would be barred from future participation in our programs for a specified period of time. They would not be able to purchase any additional properties during that period or receive any additional TDHCA funding of any kind during that term. It does not prohibit participating in any existing engagements, though. It also doesn't affect any responsibilities or duties thereunder, unless the order specifically states that. That's very rare. So in almost all circumstances, there would be no impact on your existing portfolio. It's just preventing you from purchasing additional properties or getting additional funding. What can cause debarment? I would encourage you to take a look at our rule at 10 Tax subchapter 2 or chapter 2. There's a very long list of potential debarment violations, and I would encourage you to look at those. But some of the keys are repeated low physical inspection scores. Manny will discuss this earlier. If you have multiple scores below 50 on your NSPIRE inspection, that is going to trigger a debarment referral. Repeated penalty referrals in the portfolio. If you've had a lot of referrals within the last 3 years, if it exceeds 50% of your ownership portfolio, that would also trigger debarment. Misrepresentation or fraud, that can include intentional or unintentional misrepresentations. Refusal to reduce rents to a compliant level. So Kara talked a little bit about our compliance file monitoring. Let's say that you have gross rent violations and you refuse to reduce those rents. That could trigger debarment. But like I said, I do recommend looking at the rule because it does include a lot of different violations. For the debarment process, we do first need to offer an informal conference. That process, like I mentioned a few times, is outlined in our rule at 10 Tax subchapter 2. The maximum debarment term is open. It's based upon material factors outlined at 10 Tax 2.401J. There is no upper or lower limit. And actually the governing board for TDHCA has the authority to impose shorter or longer terms than those that are recommended. We do also post our debarment list online. So all parties who have been referred and approved by our board for debarment are listed on that debarment list. It is, our current list is missing one. I do need to update it, but it's only missing, it's about a month behind. But if you look at our website, it will have a list of all our debarred parties. It also has a list of all of our approved penalty orders. What to do if you're referred for a penalty or debarment. If you are referred for one of your properties, don't wait for legal to contact you. Best thing for you to do is to immediately talk to the management company, the compliance managers at the site, and then contact both the referring person at TDHCA, whether that's physical inspections, file monitoring, whomever it is that referred the property for a penalty or debarment. And then also contact me. You have my email address there in the presentation. Next, I recommend uploading complete corrections into CMTS. You also need to upload the acknowledgement of administrative penalty referral if it was a penalty referral rather than debarment. and adjust your internal management policies to ensure that similar referrals don't happen again. A lot of times, like Kara was talking about, people will maybe miss a deadline, and it's really important to make sure, if that's what happened, that you're updating your procedures to make sure it doesn't happen again. And taking these steps immediately can, in some cases, help the owner avoid penalty action. The owner acknowledgement of penalty referral form does cause some confusion. It is required as part of any file monitoring, physical inspection, NSPIRE referral. It's not required for final construction inspections. What compliance will do when they issue their penalty referral notice, they'll upload that to CMTS. They'll also upload a separate form called an owner's acknowledgement of referral. That form has to be completed by the owner, not property management. We do see this problem pretty frequently, and we do check. Exhibit 1 of the form needs to be included. That's an organizational chart, and it needs to show us the entire ownership structure for that owning entity down to the level of natural persons. It also needs to indicate who has control authority. I frequently see org charts where people are omitting the human component, but just keep in mind it has to go all the way down to the natural persons there. And then Exhibit 2 will list actively monitored developments that are under each controlling party. This is kind of what the form looks like. It has a series of acknowledgements that the owner needs to sign. And again, there's a red line in there that sometimes gets ignored, but the development owner is the one who must sign this. It cannot be signed by property management. It also is certifying that both Exhibits 1 and 2 are included. Frequently, I'll get this form without Exhibits 1 or 2. So just make sure that you include those. Here's an example of Exhibit 1. This is an organizational chart. Again, just key to remember that you need to go all the way down to natural persons here. And in this example that we have for you, we have ability to control written in red. You can indicate it however you want to, different color, right? Ability to control, highlight it, circle it. It doesn't matter, just so long as it's clear to us who has control authority there. And like I said, that it goes all the way down to natural persons here. Exhibit 2 is an actively monitored development list. At the top here, it shows all of the legal names of the people to be analyzed. So these are the controlling parties that we had from our prior screen. And it'll list all of the actively monitored developments with TDHCA for those people. If you do have multiple people that all control the same thing, they can be on the same form. However, let's say person 1 and person 2 control 2 completely separate lists of TDHCA properties, you will need to submit multiple Exhibit 2 forms. So really important to make sure you do that for everyone who has that control authority that's disclosed at Exhibit 1. And we do check CMTS as well to verify. So make sure that everything is accurate because we do double check it. Tips for avoiding penalties or debarment. We compiled a pretty lengthy technical support PDF, and there's a link to it there. And it goes over all kinds of tips and guidance for avoiding penalty referrals because we really want our owners to succeed. We want to provide decent, safe, affordable housing. And our preference is not to have to go through this enforcement process if we don't need to. So that technical support guide is there for you. But do please keep in mind that it's not all inclusive and it's still the owner's responsibility to be aware of all applicable TDHCA statutes, rules, and your LURA's terms. We also want to make sure that you understand that it's vital for owners and management companies to proactively edit their internal management policies and take all necessary actions to ensure complete and timely compliance, because failure to do that could cause the owner to be debarred if they're referred too many times. Like I mentioned before, there's a 50% referral threshold. So let's say you have an ownership entity with 10 properties, 5 of them have been referred within the last 3 years, that would trigger potential debarment under our rules. So it's really important, if you have been referred for a penalty, make sure that you're proactively editing your protocols to make sure it doesn't happen again at that property or any of the other properties that are in either the ownership or management portfolios. And the idea behind that technical support guide is to help you with that a little bit. So in conclusion, pay attention to your property managers, and deadlines are so important. It's something that both Kara and Manuel talked about a lot today. You need to make sure that you hire experienced and competent property management because they're your first line of defense. Make sure you calendar all of your reporting deadlines. So Kara mentioned earlier, your annual reports are due every April 30th. You also have quarterly vacancy reports that are due 4 times a year. So they'll be due the 10th of January, April, July, and October. So make sure you're submitting those. Make sure that you're regularly overseeing property management. I know it can sometimes get a little bit out of control, and you sometimes forget to oversee property management, but it's really important to have regular meetings with both your property management supervisors and the on-site staff, just to make sure that everything is flowing as it should be and to prevent problems. It's much easier to fix early on rather than after it spirals. Make sure that you're reviewing TDHCA correspondence and tracking all of our deadlines. Like Kara said, you won't receive reminders. The only time you'll receive a reminder is if you're already working with me on an enforcement file. I do send reminders, but I am the only one. Compliance will not send reminders about regular monitoring deadlines. So make sure you're overseeing resolution, ensuring complete and timely submissions, and regularly checking CMTS. Kara went over the attachment section earlier. Make sure that you're regularly checking that just in case you miss an email. And then, do you want to do it, Trishul?
I can or you can.
Okay, I'll give it back to Kara then for additional training opportunities. I like this shuffle here.
We're scooting chairs around here. This is the first time we've done it this way, so thank y'all for tolerating us. So if you guys are familiar with me, you know that I'm the person responsible for all the external trainings that we offer. We coordinate those with the Texas Apartment Association. Sometimes we do a lot of trainings here through the department that are offered at no cost to you guys. We post all of our trainings that we do internally or through the department. We post those on our website that's there at the very top. And so if you email me or Isela or Manuel and you say, hey, I'm a new owner, I just took over this property, there's a really good chance we're going to send you this presentation back or something similar to this and say, hey, go through this website. We have these resources. They are a great resource and help to you. Once a quarter, we do an in-person income determination training that actually opened this morning for March 6th. So if that's something you've got staff that wants to do, I have no idea if that's full yet or not. Last time it did fill up in about 30 minutes. So check that. If it did fill up, there will be another one in June. Like I said, we also offer trainings in conjunction with the Apartment Association. I believe they can also get recordings to staff if necessary, that you can visit with them about that or reach out to them. The Multifamily Compliance Division offers monthly office hours, which is what you're here for today. And that is an opportunity where we do a mini training, and then we also have about an hour of open forum time, and where you can ask any questions. The webinar is recorded, but I will stop the recording here in just a second when we shift gears into the open forum. We want that to be a fully open conversation where we can share information with you guys and you can ask whatever questions back to us. We usually have compliance and physical inspection staff. Our 811 monitor usually comes. Our PFC monitor is usually there. And then some different folks pop in and out depending on what their schedules allow for. You also should be signed up for emailed announcements. That's another key to success. That is how we communicate to you guys or to our housing partners that, hey, there's a rule change or there's a report that's due. So in effect, we do sometimes send out reminders in that regard. And so if you're signed up for those lists, that's great. If you're not, go do that as soon as you log off of this webinar. I've got some listed contacts here. Some of these folks weren't with us today, but they are important to the information that we presented. Wendy Quackenbush is the Director of Multifamily Compliance. Amy Hammond is with us today, and she's the Manager of Compliance Monitoring. Manuel Pena is with us today. He's the Manager of Physical Inspections. He mentioned Mike Podoloff, who is a construction specialist, so you can email him if you have construction inspection specifics. My name is Kara Poli. I'm a team leader of compliance monitoring. I'm also over, in addition to training, a lot of the utility allowance stuff. So if you have questions there, I can be a good resource. Isela Caseman, that's her official title. It's really long, but she's going to be the resource that you hopefully never have to use. But if you do have to use her, there's her email address if there is a referral or an enforcement situation. And then Joanne Taylor handles the previous participation reviews. So if you are an owner or an entity that's applying for additional funds or part of a new funding at a property, you might hear from Joe Taylor. So that's all we have for the official presentation. Amy, are there any other questions that go with this webinar? So if you just joined us for the webinar and you're jumping off, you will be prompted to complete a survey. I appreciate any and all feedback, constructive, kind, or otherwise. And if you have anything that you feel like did not get answered in this or that you'd like more information on, please respond accordingly in the survey, and I will reach back out to you probably next week, but I do respond to those emails or forward them to the applicable person. Without further ado, I'm going to end this webinar recording, if I can find where my mouse went, and we will shift into the open forum office hours. Thank you guys for joining us. Stay put. We're going to switch gears real quick.